The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at www.mtsu.edu/CEM.
This afternoon, we have 4 mini sessions presented by educators who work with English learners in 4 different school districts in Tennessee. Our presenters today are Joseph Winery, ESL Supervisor, Williamson County Schools; Rachel Counts, EL Coordinator, Lawrence County Schools; Luke Dickerson, ESL Teacher, Murfreesboro City Schools; and Dr. Gracie Arroyo, ESL 7th grade teacher, Bedford County Schools. Our first presenter this afternoon will be Joseph Winery. Joseph is the ESL supervisor in Williamson County Schools. Joseph has been active in the ELL collaborative since the very beginning. He and his teachers have been extremely supportive of our work and our building of the collaborative over the years. So Joseph, we're happy to have you. So if you'll take it, we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
So good afternoon and welcome back to the MTSU ESL Collaborative Virtual Summer Academy. And I hope the morning session was informative and likewise for our afternoon sessions. As we heard from Jan, Nancy, and Joanne of TDOE this morning, districts and schools must continue to identify and screen potential students for ESL services. And LEAs must do this regardless of the plan to start the school year with building remote or hybrid instruction. They outlined the state's guidance for these remote identification and screening procedures. That's an important framework for all of us to follow. But the guidance does not cover much of the substance. What exactly might we use to conduct a provisional screening and have some consistency and reliability in identifying the students who are ELs? Included with that guidance are several great sources of support and information. Except for the solemn rubric, I am not going to cover these in my presentation, but I do encourage you to grab and download or bookmark them. So these are big parts of the identification and screening framework, but they are not much at all of the substance. Today, I want to share a plan for that substance. In this morning's session, Jan and Joanne walked us through the 10-step process to provisionally identify English learners. Step 5 is where we all need to contact students and families through a FERPA-compliant connection, such as Skype or Zoom. It is also the step where we need to have a set of questions and interactions with that student to determine the language proficiency. I think of this like how I took apart our deck and rebuilt our rotting deck. The underlying structure was fine, and I am glad I did not have to set the foundation posts in cement nor install the floor joists to the house. But having the framework alone was not sufficient. It needed substance. To clarify, I am talking about the provisional identification and screening of students in grades 1 through 12. This is not a replacement for the WIDA screener. It's a placeholder until you and the students can return safely to school to conduct the in-person and in-depth intake process. First, establish a rapport with the family as you start the Zoom or Skype or other online arrangement. Talk with the parents. Establish a relation with them about their home language background, adjustments to the area, questions they have about school, and so on. Invite the parent to sit close to the child during the intake, especially the youngest students, and ask them to refrain from commenting or coaching during your session. Talk with the child and introduce yourself. Ask questions about general interests and recent activities to establish a rapport. Use the share screen then at full size for a series of grade span slides. Use the pointer or the mouse to bring attention to certain areas of illustrations. Start with level 3 questions. Move up or down to find that level. You will be able to download 2 PDF files of this provisional screener. One file has the full screen image that you use to question and prompt the students' responses and interactions. The other file has a smaller image of the screen with a script of questions, expected responses, and notes for how to move up or down in the level of questioning. The slide images are all sourced from Creative Commons, unlicensed, and allowed for non-commercial use. If you find an image that should not be used in this way, please let me know. For each grade span, the images are in sets of approximately the same pattern. For example, image 1 is always a classroom scene with typical classroom items, but no people. Questions center on WIDA Standard 1, social and instructional language. Image 2 is also in the classroom, focusing on some daily use items appropriate for students in that grade span. The questions, again, are at WIDA Standard 1. They attempt to push the student beyond just identifying them as objects and ask about purpose. Image 3, and in the case of grade spans 9 through 12, one extra image, ask the students about activity preferences, reasons for their choices, and so on. This slide is always a composite of 2 or 3 images so that students have options of indoor and outdoor, group, and single activities. The last image is the only one that relates to academic content. It features WIDA Standard 4, Language of Science. The image shows something cyclical and prompts students to use transition words and sequences. As I mentioned earlier, each slide image starts with questions to elicit level 3 responses from the student. Since we are only provisionally identifying as ELs, we only need to determine if the student's oral fluency is below, at, or above level 3 proficiency. In fact, if it is clear within the first slide or two that the student is level 1 or well above level 3, there is no real need to continue with the remaining images and questions. You decide if you have enough evidence to provisionally identify the student as EL. I'm going to click through the next set of slides for grades 1 and 2 very quickly, just so you can see the 4 images in a row. And then I'll stop at grades 3 and 5 and go through the script of that one. Image 1 is the classroom scene. Image 2 is the close-up. Image 3 is an activity scene. And image 4 is from the language of science and asks students something about what they would do next or what they see next. For grades 3 and 5 now, I'm going to read you one complete series. I'll show you the complete series images and read the script for it. I will read for image 1, I will read the entire script, including the level 3, level 2, and level 1 prompts, and then I will move more quickly through the rest of this grade span's images and point out a few questions at each grade level. Set the scene with the same introductory statement for all students. Then start with level 3 and be ready to adjust the level questions down depending on the responses. Setting the scene. This is a classroom. Let's talk about what we see in the classroom. I see a chalkboard and a globe. What do you see? If the response is a word or a phrase or the student is unsure, then proceed with, listen to my sentence. I see a chalkboard and a globe. Now say your answer the same way. If the response is still a word or a phrase, go to level 2. If the response is a full sentence or compound sentence, continue with level 3. I don't see the teacher or the students in the classroom now. Where are they? Expect a full sentence response. If the response is a word or a phrase, or if the student is unsure, you can say, the students are not in the classroom. Where are the students? Expect the full sentence response. If the response is a word or a phrase, then go to level 2. If the response is a full sentence or compound sentence, continue a brief exchange with the student to see if the fluency is higher than a level 3. Yes, I think you're right. They might be at lunch, on the playground, at recess, whatever the student just said. I see things on their desks, so they did not clean up and go home. Can you tell me more about the classroom? Note how the student responds and then go to the next slide. That was the level 3 set of questions. Same slide, level 2 set of questions. If you drop to that very quickly, it would start like this. I see a chalkboard. What do you see? If the response is a word or the student is unsure, go with this. Listen to my sentence. I see a chalkboard. Now say your answer the same way. If the response is still a word, go to level 1. If the response is at least a phrase, continue with level 2. I see some desks and chairs. I do not see students. Where are the students? Expect a phrase response. If the response is a word, or if the student is unsure, you can say, are students in the classroom? You can expect the response no, and then, where are the students? Expect the phrase response. If the response is a word, or the student is unsure, go to level 1. If the response is a phrase or a sentence, continue a brief exchange with the student to see if the fluency is higher than the level 2. Yes, I think you're right. The students are eating lunch, playing outside, whatever the student just said. Tell me more about the classroom. Note how the student responds, then go to the next slide. And here are the level 1 questions, same slide. So if you drop down to level 1 fairly quickly in the conversation, it goes like this. I see a globe. You can use your zoom pointer to indicate the globe in the classroom. Do you see the globe? Expect the response, yes. And then use this pointer to indicate a desk. What is this? If there is still no response, go to the next slide. You can expect the response desk, and then you can say, what is this? And then finally you go to the next slide. So that was a very long explanation of one slide. You are not going to spend that much time on one slide because you're going to either start with level 3 and stay there, or you're going to drop to level 2 or level 1 and finish with there, and then you'll go to the next slide. So this is image 2 in this series for grades 3-5. And again, you'll set the scene with a statement for all students like this. These are tables. Let's talk about what we see on the tables. And a level 3 question will start with, I see some pencils in the holders on the table. What do you see near the pencils? The level 2 question, so if you ended slide 1 with level 2, of course you would start this next slide with level 2, and you would start with, I see a pencil. What do you see? If you ended slide 1 with level 1, you would continue on this slide with level 1 and say, I see a pencil. Do you see the pencil? What is this? And you would use the pointer to indicate something else in the scene there. All right. Then moving on to image 3. This is the activity scene. Again, I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just give you an idea of the 3 levels of questioning. You set the scene. These are things that students like to do. Some students like to play here. Some students like to play with these. And some students like to do this. Level 3 question, what do you like to do for recess? The level 2 starting question, what do you like to do? And the level 1 starting question, do you like to play on the slide? And then the 4th image of this grade span series looks like this. You set the scene for all students. This is a science lesson about how plants grow. The level 3 question, if you've continued at the level 3, is first, some seeds are planted in soil. Then seedlings grow out of the seeds. Now, tell me what happens in the last picture. The level 2 series of questions starts with, first, some seeds are in the dirt. Then seedlings grow. Tell me about the last picture. And if you continued with level 1 questioning, it would be These are seeds. The seeds grow. Now what happens? So I'm going to click through the next series of slides for 6, 8, and 9, 12, just so you can see how the images progress, sort of grade appropriate for the scenes, grades 9 through 12. All right. So at the start of this presentation, I indicated that there's a link to the Solon Teacher Observation rubric. Since we might be conducting the provisional screening from home or elsewhere with limited printing, there is a third file in the downloads for this session. This is a fillable Word doc of the Solon rubric. For each student, you'll start a new doc. Type the student's information in the top screen where you see those gray spaces there. It's fillable, so you can just type in that space. Conduct the provisional screener, and as you're going through the screener, you're going to indicate the score the student's responses according to the proficiency levels of the rubric. So a filled out form might look something like this. Oops, sorry, back up. There you go. This is one that's filled out. So I filled out the information at the top here. And as I was working with the student and going through that, I kind of gauged where the student was landing. So for the comprehension, I gauged it as a 3, fluency a 2, vocabulary 2, the pronunciation 3, and grammar 2. Add all these up, divide by 5, and you get the rubric score of a 2.4. Then you use that with the other evidence you have, other pieces of information, to decide whether or not this student looks like they would be needing some supports through ESL. Clearly don't need the supports at all because they've done extremely well throughout these slides and so on. So that wraps up my presentation. Dr. Clark, let's field some questions from the chat.
We have a few questions that have come through on this, and I'm happy to see lots of new districts joining us on this chat today. But let's start. Asmila sent a question, and 2 or 3 people chimed in and said, yes, I like that question. So it has to do with if the parents don't speak any English, and if the child doesn't speak English at all, what do we do? Do we need interpreters? Do we make phone calls? Thoughts on that? Anybody? So Joseph.
Well, my take on that is, of course, we need to get to what the child is able to produce, and that might differ very a lot from what the parents are able to do. So if you have concerns that initial, just establishing the phone call or the Skype or Zoom session with that parent is going to be a challenge, work with your district resources to get an interpreter or communicate with them in advance by an email that is in their language so that they know that at a certain day and time, a call is coming to their home and we're going to be talking with you and with your child. Because we have many instances, obviously, when children have gained a lot of fluency, the parents maybe not so much. But we don't want to get on the phone and immediately just ask to speak with the child out of the blue. The parents won't understand what it's about. So you need to set up, and my procedure is not going to talk, it doesn't have that outlined at all, but what are you going to do to establish that connection with the family so that you are talking with the parents, your purpose in calling, and set that up. And then, as I said, get the child on screen with them. If it's a young child, it might be better to have their parents there with them. The older students may not be very comfortable in having their folks sitting there next to them on that. You just want to make sure the parents are not going to be there coaching and commenting along the way as you're trying to screen the students. So do what you need to do to communicate with the families about, we are going to have an online session. It might be very quick with both ends because you might get on there and it might just be a phone call where you're talking with the student and you realize, yep, that's a level 1 right there. And thank you very much. So move on to the next one.
And we have about 5 more minutes on the Q&A. Okay. Someone wanted you to speak a little about run-on sentences. If a child replies in run-on sentences, do you just use your own judgment?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if younger children may tend to do that just because they've got a lot to say and they're trying to show you all that they've got there and they haven't maybe had much chance to be speaking English or whatever. Yeah. So just kind of take that in context of, that student has a lot of words in their mouths. So would that student be successful in a classroom with a teacher who would be able to handle, and give their appropriate instruction? I think so. Now, if it's a run-on sentence and the student is just stringing, or just a run-on thought, has nothing to do with what you've been talking about there or the image that you're showing, try to, redirect back to, well, let's just talk about this for right now. But again, you're going to kind of roll that into how fluent is that student? How engaged is that student going to be in instruction?
All right. Betty Thompson wanted you to say something about the graphing calculator that you use to make the graphs meeting expectations.
Right.
Any thoughts on that, Joseph?
Yeah, it's not done for this year. So hang on a little while. As you know, our WIDA access scores are coming out later this week. So there's a lot of things that are kind of hinging on when the scores are out. But I will be working on that, and I will post it back into a folder that I've shared with people across the state since, maybe 3 years ago when we did that round of Tennessee with some trainings about the ILPs. So I will reshare that, or I will share it, and I will contact the folks that are on the contact list that I've generated from that. And if you're not familiar with what that is, just ask around and somebody will help you out. But yes, that will be updated for the coming school year for you people that need to have that.
Dr. Sherry Crook had a question about about setting up the appointments and chatting with the parents. If translators are available, or if they have unique languages. Thoughts on that?
Well, in our district, for example, we don't have translators on staff. That's not part of, we don't have the volume to afford that. So we do it the best we can with contacts that we have within our employees within the district who are bilingual. Sometimes that matches up. Sometimes we do get some sort of one-offs with the families in terms of that particular language. So again, we would try to reach out through maybe through an email. Sometimes the parents, as they receive an email, have somebody that can assist them with that. Keep it very simple. Just simply state your purpose for that. If it doesn't happen and school has to get started, you're going to be having a lot of other communications with that family, depending whether you're in school or you're doing remote. So just work through your other communication sources to see if you can set something up so that you can do that to get this provisional screening done at a minimum.
Thank you, Joseph. We're going to wrap this one up. And however, will you be available to jump on the other 3 Q&As if anyone wants to follow up with a question?
I'll be listening off screen, yeah.
Joseph, thank you so much. And we will see you again, and certainly at the end of the day with some announcements about 10 TESOL.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.